A single sentence passed in the Roman Senate could turn the republic inside out. No crowds were consulted, no assemblies summoned, no formal declaration of dictatorship announced. Instead, a grim formula echoed through the Curia: Videant consuls any quid residential publica detrimenti capiat, let the consuls see to it that the republic suffers no harm. With these words, normal law bent, safeguards thinned, and political conflict crossed into a dangerous gray zone. This was the Senatus Consultum Ultimum, the so-called final decree of the Senate, Rome's closest equivalent to what we would today call martial law. What the SCU actually was, and was not. The SCU was not a law in the modern sense. Roman senators could issue Senatus Consulta, but these were technically advisory opinions, not binding statutes. The paradox is that the SCU, while legally advice, carried overwhelming political force. Once issued, it effectively authorized the consuls to use extraordinary measures, including lethal force, against perceived internal enemies. Unlike the dictatorship, a constitutional emergency office with defined limits, 6 months, a clear mandate, a named individual, the SCU was deliberately vague. It did not specify what actions were allowed. It did not suspend laws explicitly. It simply told magistrates to do whatever was necessary. That ambiguity was its power, and its poison. From a constitutional perspective, the SCU lived in a legal twilight. It neither abolished existing protections nor clearly overrode them. Instead, it created a situation where magistrates could later claim necessity as justification for actions that would otherwise be illegal. The political world that gave birth to the SCU. The SCU emerged in the late Roman Republic, a period when Rome's institutions were buckling under the weight of empire. Conquests had flooded Italy with wealth, slaves, and inequality. Political competition intensified, violence became routine, and traditional norms, mos maiorum, lost their restraining force. The Senate, dominated by aristocratic elites, increasingly feared popular leaders who appealed directly to the masses, populares like the Gracchi, Saturninus, or later Caesar. The SCU became a defensive weapon, a way for the Senate to assert control without formally dismantling the republic's legal facade. In my view, this is crucial. The SCU was less about saving the republic and more about preserving senatorial dominance while avoiding the stigma of outright tyranny. The first blood, Gaius Gracchus, 121 BCE. The most famous early use of the SCU came in 121 BCE against Gaius Gracchus, a tribune pushing radical reforms, land redistribution, grain subsidies, and broader citizenship rights. When tensions escalated into street violence, the Senate issued the SCU. Consul Lucius Opimius interpreted the decree as a green light. Armed forces were mobilized inside the city, an extraordinary step. Gracchus and thousands of his supporters were killed without trial. Here the constitutional shock becomes clear. Roman citizens possessed the right of provocatio, appeal to the people against capital punishment. The SCU did not explicitly revoke this right, yet it was ignored. Opimius later defended himself by claiming the Senate's decree absolved him. He was acquitted. This set a terrifying precedent: if the Senate declared an emergency, citizen rights became negotiable. From emergency tool to political habit. What began as an exceptional response gradually became routine. The SCU was issued repeatedly in moments of crisis. Against Saturninus in 100 BCE. During Catilin's conspiracy in 63 BCE. In later conflicts between rival factions of the elite. Each time, the decree normalized the idea that legality could be suspended in the name of public safety. The Catilin episode, overseen by Cicero, is particularly revealing. After uncovering a conspiracy, Cicero ordered the execution of Roman citizens without trial, citing the SCU. He later boasted of saving the Republic, but was eventually exiled for violating citizen rights. This contradiction lies at the heart of the SCU. It empowered magistrates to act decisively, yet left them legally vulnerable once political winds shifted. Cicero's constitutional tightrope. Cicero's defense of the SCU is intellectually fascinating and deeply troubling. He argued that the Republic itself was the highest law, salus rei publici suprema lex esto. In extreme danger, formal procedures could be bypassed to preserve the state. This logic feels uncomfortably modern. Many contemporary emergency powers are justified in similar terms. The Roman example shows how seductive, and dangerous, this reasoning can be. Once necessity becomes the ultimate standard, law becomes optional. Personally, I think Cicero knew exactly what he was doing. He wrapped political violence in philosophical language, transforming brute force into moral duty. SCU versus dictatorship, a telling comparison. Why did the Romans increasingly prefer the SCU over the dictatorship? The answer is political optics. A dictator was visible, accountable, and time-limited. The SCU allowed the Senate to avoid naming a tyrant while still unleashing extraordinary power. Responsibility was diffused. Violence became bureaucratic. In this sense, the SCU represents a shift from constitutional emergency to informal authoritarianism. Power operated behind legal smoke screens, not open declarations. Did the SCU actually save the Republic? Ironically, no. If anything, it accelerated the Republic's collapse. By undermining due process, the SCU eroded trust in institutions. Political opponents learned that losing a power struggle could mean death without trial. Violence escalated accordingly. Eventually, figures like Sulla and Caesar concluded that if the rules could be bent, they could be broken entirely. The SCU taught Roman politicians a fatal lesson: legality was conditional. A Roman warning for modern states. Calling the SCU Roman martial law is tempting, but incomplete. Martial law today is usually codified, regulated, and publicly acknowledged. The SCU was more insidious, an emergency power that pretended not to be one. This makes it eerily relevant. Many modern states maintain emergency provisions that exist in legal gray zones, technically temporary, practically permanent. Rome shows how such tools can hollow out a republic from within. The SCU was not tyranny by decree, it was tyranny by implication. The Senatus Consultum Ultimum reveals a republic that feared chaos more than injustice. In choosing security over legality, Rome normalized political killing and legalized fear. The decree did not end emergencies, it made them structural. If Roman history teaches anything here, it is that constitutional shortcuts rarely remain shortcuts. They become roads with no clear return.